keep turning. Good morning and welcome to LoveBabz, LoveTalk. This morning I'm talking to Alasdair, Neale, the artistic director over at the New Haven Symphony Orchestra. And we are, the last couple of weeks I've been talking to artists and people who work with artists and people who do artistic expression because this COVID-19 has just run through this community in such a way that it has caused all kinds of art venues to shut down, to close their doors, to not move forward with productions. And it has been quite a challenging time. And so I appreciate you, Alasdair, coming on to talk a lot about what is happening, particularly with musicians and how this cuts across and into their livelihood.
Yes, it does, and good morning, Babz, from the other side of the country. I wish I were here with you in New Haven, but I'm on the West Coast here in San Francisco, which is where I spend much of the rest of the year. And I should have been in New Haven for the entire month of second half of March and April, and I'm so sorry that I can't be there in person. But I'm so grateful to have the chance to speak with you this morning.
Thank you, because I know it's crazy early.
We talked initially about, well, was this going to be 6 o'clock? And because it's 7 o'clock my time now. And we thought about it initially 6 o'clock. And I thought, well, I might be able to be ready for you, or my hair, but
well, you look fabulous.
A little zhuzhing, and that's it. So it's pretty low maintenance. And actually, as it turns out, I'm getting up so super early these days. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of normal scheduling going on. So I actually was up around 5 o'clock today. So 6 o'clock would have worked out just fine, as it turns out. Anyway, I'm here, you're here, and that's the important thing.
So talk a little bit about the effects of this, and as someone, you're new to the New Haven Symphony. This is your maiden year, and to have this happen as you're moving into this season, to have this happen. I mean, give me some thoughts or some reflections on what this is like for you.
Well, my first thoughts are immediately going to the musicians. I mean, it would have been so nice to have completed my first season as we had planned, but the thing that's so important is this, in effect, the brick wall that we all ran into, and the musicians in particular. For many of our members of the orchestra, this is one of their prime sources of income, and like many other people up and down the country, it's immediately cut off. So there is that. Now I realize that covers many millions of people, and musicians are not the only people for whom this is an immediate and threatening thing. But nonetheless, so many of our musicians have been affected immediately by that. Some have their incomes mitigated by private studios. So teaching is going on, and people have had to immediately adjust to the implications of doing this all online. And while it's never any substitute for the real thing, I think that people can impart a great deal amount of information and helpfulness to their students online, even though the quality of the sound may not be ideal. With a lot of things you can still teach. So activity is still going on, but it's severely curtailed. And we are all trying at the New Haven Symphony, working together to try and find ways of exploring a path forward together in the interim, since we have now canceled all our concerts in April and also May.
Mm-hmm. And so when you get with the board, I would imagine you have this conversation with the board, you have this conversation with the staff. What happens? What's the conversation? Do you say, okay, we're gonna shut this down in April and May? Do you come back and convene again and see what you can do into the summer, into the fall? how creative can you get, or how creative does this allow for you to sort of maybe regain some of what has been lost?
Yeah. Well, I think we're working on working on a couple of different continuums, if you like, at the same time. There's the short term and figuring out what is the possibility of us doing the concerts that we planned in June, the beginning of June with our Pops concert with Chelsea Tipton, and then later on our participation in the International Festival of Arts and Ideas. Those decisions are still pending, and we're just waiting for waiting for things to unfold. We can't make a decision there yet. But I'm also thinking ahead to the fall and what this might mean for our next season. Again, nobody can tell you what's going to be happening in September or in October. Anybody tries to, I think they are not giving you accurate information. None of us knows what the possibilities are. I am a glass half full kind of person, so I'm hopeful that whether or not concerts take place in June, that we would be in a position to gather again for the opening of our classical series at the very beginning of October, and giving some thought to how best to come back together again, striking the right tone. And it may mean a number of adjustments in the plans that we've already made for the next season. And the good thing about our art form is that, and what I love about classical music in general, is that we can draw on such an incredible treasure trove of music that stretches back hundreds of years and that has always attempted to express all aspects of the human condition. And that's one of the things that I love, is the ambition of saying, yeah, I'm a composer, let's say, whatever time frame you're in, but I'm going to try and convey through my art the idea of pain or joy or suffering or humor or irony. I mean, all of these things that make up what we do. Classical music can express that in an extraordinary degree, and so I certainly am not in a position of making any hard and fast decisions at this point, except to know that whatever plans that we had are very malleable. And so I want to be able to not necessarily, I want to be able to respond to what feels right in the mood at the time, and come up with the best possible response for bringing back people together again.
So when these kinds of things happen, Alasdair, and I don't know of any time that this kind of thing has happened. I think the only thing that I can liken this to is, the 80s, at the early 80s, when the AIDS crises, HIV and AIDS crises, was at its height, and it affected, the arts community, from fashion to musicians alike. But that's the closest thing that I could sort of say that this reminds me of. Does this give you opportunity to think about how orchestras around this country do business, set aside money, allocate resources for this kind of thing? Because I don't know how musicians are paid through a symphony system. Like, is there money for them, beyond not getting, not moving forward with concerts? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
What happens to them?
That's a great series of questions, actually. Let me sort of work backwards a little bit. Orchestral musicians are paid in different ways in this country, and part of it is dependent on whether you are part of a what would be called a 52-week season, like, let's say, the New York Philharmonic, San Francisco Symphony, Boston Symphony, who put on concerts most weeks of the year, and musicians are salaried through that, versus the regional orchestras, which one would count New Haven, which musicians are paid on what's called a per service basis, and that means if it's just every time we rehearse for or play a concert.
Uh-oh. Harry. I don't know what happened to like frozen. Alasdair, can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me. I think you're frozen on my screen, so I don't know if that's an interference.
Yeah, his camera froze up.
Okay. So I don't even know if you can hear us. Alasdair, maybe you could log out and log back in. I don't know if that'll help you. Maybe. Like get out of your screen and then come back in. Yeah, okay. So I think he might do that. Harry.
Yeah, he just left.
Okay, so he'll come back on. That's all right. You know, this medium is what it is, right? I can take my criminal justice sign down. I was like, oh, let me take my criminal justice sign down. So when he comes back, and then you know what? I'll slide to the other side of the camera.
So how you doing, Babz?
I'm all right. I can't complain. I cannot complain, Harry. I'm a little achy this morning, but it'll be fine. I appreciate him trying to talk to me from the West Coast this morning because it's God knows it's 7 o'clock in the morning out there. I was like, ooh. I'd have been like, ooh, I love you, but I can't come on. But I am genuinely interested in the symphony and artists, because this seems to be a very challenging time if you make your living as an artist, as a musician, because venues have shut down. So I'm just saying.
Your background is much better than mine.
Oh, is it? But that's because you didn't change it.
No, my real background. Look at my real background, Babz.
Oh, see, I kind of like that real background, Harry. You got like a whole command center.
Yeah, I'm in between the printers and the shoe racks.
I know, and then all the fans.
And all the fans.
I hope Alasdair can come back.
Maybe he thinks the interview is over. Maybe he thinks we cut him off.
No, I hope not. I hope he can come back on. Let me see. I don't think I have his.
There he goes.
Okay. Hello there.
You guys there?
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry. Listen, this technology is what it is. Don't worry.
Yeah, this went so much better in rehearsal.
Don't.
No, it's like I think there's a problem with my Wi-Fi here. So I'm just I'm so proud of myself. Very 21st century. I'm connecting you through my cell phone, so using cell data. But something happened with the Wi-Fi at my home. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry. Listen, it's all good. You back.
Mine, it's still something of a miracle that we're actually able to do this, right? I mean, freaky.
Oh no!
But where were we?
So we were talking about artists, how symphonies are paid, musicians are paid, and what happens. Does this change the way you move forward with setting aside money? I mean, this is such a new thing that it's got to have to. It really must make for people to think about the way we do business differently.
He's frozen again.
I know. That's all right. It's all right. He'll come right back. Just click it off, click back on. It'll be fine. Listen, this is listen. I seen this happen on Good Morning America. I saw it happen on what's the other show they do? The talk show, the Round Table with the View. So I've seen this all over the place. So it's not just us. Better? Yep, that's fine.
You know what I did? I turned off my Wi-Fi altogether. So I hope we're set now.
Okay. So talk
So
away.
fingers crossed. Uh, so yeah, I think the larger discussions are going to be I mean, what are the role of the arts in our society, and how are the old business models going to survive? And that's been a question that's been going in the orchestra world a long time. And this may force the discussion into a new area. I mean, so much of the model has depended on, in this country, which is very different from many other societies where state support is much, much more strong. But we are dependent on a mixture of our ticket income, which is getting less and less, particularly through, well, I should say, the model of a subscription where you pay in advance for X amount of concerts that you go to.
Uh-huh.
And that has already been trending downward and downward, and as part of a larger societal trend in which people don't want to commit to something 6 months or 7 months away. They're much more likely to want to go, well, what am I going to do this evening? As opposed to, this is part of my routine, part of my life that I'm committed to. And the other thing that is absolutely key is a combination of foundation grants and individual charitable donations. And that's what sets the US apart from most other places, that we are incredibly grateful to those foundations and businesses and individuals that support us through donations. And we're not, but nobody can know the long-term effects of what's happening here right now, particularly with the economy the way it is. Who's going to be in a position to have the wherewithal to support the arts? This is the giant question mark hanging over all of the institutions, not just symphonies.
Well, I would imagine that foundations and money giving organizations have to think differently about how that happens, because this has been such an upending thing. I mean, when the lights went dark on Broadway, I mean, I think there was a collective breath, gasp across this country that when Broadway said, we got shut down, I think that really was the signal of, and then a domino effect of all the other musical venues that happened, concerts and so now people are trying to be creative about, what will it mean when we come back from this, Alasdair, of gathering together to hear music or any production?
So my hope in all of this is that, since we've all, by the time this gets back to whatever we're going to call normal, we'll have had a lot of time as a society to reflect on what's important to us. And there will still be the incredibly important idea, the incredibly vital questions of food and shelter, without which we can't live at all. But in a larger context, I think we're all going to be wondering what it means for human solidarity to be able to get together and experience something as a group. We are already craving that. I don't know about you, but I miss my friends.
Oh, me too.
And beyond the fact that, the challenging fact that the idea of an orchestra concert of 1,000 to 2,000 to 2,500 people all together in a relatively confined space may be one of the last things that's going to be comfortable to put on. Let's say we get to that point. What is it going to mean for people to come and hear, let's just say, my area here, a symphony concert? My hope is that it'll be a variation of Absence Makes the Heart Grow Fonder. People will have missed that collective experience that results when people make music together. I've likened it to a kind of secular communion. There's a ritual, there's an act that we all take part in together, and that is a very powerful thing, because it's more than just hearing the sounds. If you want to hear a symphony, well, just go to YouTube and put it on. You've got your symphony, you've got a Beethoven symphony in your own living room. And if you've got a great sound system, well, you can get a pretty astounding product coming at you and you alone in your living room. I've always felt that well, that's fine as far as it goes, but it cannot compare to the real feeling of the sound vibrations that happen in real life in the concert hall.
Oh, I agree.
And even more than that, let's just say you had had the experience of a live orchestra playing in a concert hall, and you were the only person there listening. You would have live music, but that is still less psychologically satisfying than sharing that experience with 1,000 other people. And that's, I think, what we have to focus on is the need to come together and experience this as a group of people.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk to, and I know that you have friends who are maestros across the country and across the world, what do y'all say? What have the conversations been like with your colleagues and friends around? I don't want to get into your private conversations, but what has been the overall feeling about this moment in time?
So I took the opportunity, since we have nothing but time on our hands at this point, to place individual phone calls, either in form of leaving a message sometimes, or much of the time with actually one-on-one conversations with all of my colleagues in the 3 orchestras that I conduct, in Symphony, Marin Symphony Orchestra here in California, and the Sun Valley Music Festival in Idaho. So I've had actually more than probably close to 200 conversations with my colleagues, which has been a lovely thing. But I will say that the overwhelming response from musicians has been the desire to play. I mean, it's what we do. It's what we've been hardwired to do since, some of us were 4 or 5 years old when we started doing this. It's not even so much what we do as who we are. And we are missing incredibly the power of making music together. And we just all want to come back as soon as possible. And I would predict that when that time happens, there's going to be an extraordinarily heightened level of passion and commitment on both sides, on the stage and on the audience, because it will never have meant more than it does when we come back.
So, Alasdair, does this push you to a higher level of artistic creativity? Does this push you to think about how to do music differently? I mean, because you have to start thinking that way, because this might go on longer than we know. So how do you do just what you said, using the tools at your disposal? I mean, are you thinking like that? I mean, you must be thinking like that.
Well, I think that's a really fantastic question. I think so. Maybe not immediately, because it's still too, I don't know, it's still too fresh. Believe it or not, the concert that we just broadcast last night on our watch party of our last concert with the Symphony, with the Florence Price and Dvorak.
Yes, which was beautiful.
Was 4 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago, Babz, last night.
Gosh.
Does that not seem like an eternity to you?
Yes, it does. No, it really does.
So it's really hard to get a sense of time. Time seems to be moving in a very strange and different way than most of us have ever experienced. I think your larger point is right, that we will be finding new ways of exploring creativity. I'd be fascinated to talk to and see from my composer colleagues how they're reacting to this. Because that's the real creativity that goes on. If you're creating a work of art from scratch, what's going through your mind now? How are you responding? Are you working on the same project that you were doing before in exactly the same way as if you would if business had been normal? Or is this consciously or subconsciously affecting your creative juices? So I'd be interested. I don't know. Have you had conversations with really with either composers or directors or visual artists at this point?
I have. I've had a conversation with Jacob Perdone, who is the artistic director of the Long Wharf Theater.
Yeah. Sure.
And that I'm on their board, and we had to cancel our season, right? Up into, we had a bunch of productions in place. We're on hold for some other productions, but so they've pivoted, and we'll start to do some really creative plays online that people can sort of watch. I've talked to, I'm on the board at the Arts Council of New Haven, and we've been mobilizing ways to support artists in this way, around making sure that they can pay their light bills and their rent and all these other kinds of things, but also sort of encouraging them to sort of create on this platform so that they can still feel connected, because this is a disconnecting of some sort. And so I've been just listening to the conversations. And then I've been watching some of the conversations. I saw a maestro in Italy or not Italy, maybe in the Scandinavian or Germany, and he was directing a symphony. He was like outside his yard, but he was directing online all his performers, right? All the artists from this medium. And I was like, now that is very creative.
It sure is. It probably at a certain point, as your very quick point, one runs into the technical limitations of how much you can do with that. It's just not possible to conduct. Let's say, for example, if I wanted to get, I couldn't. It wouldn't work if we tried to get everybody in New Haven Symphony in their various studios and their living rooms to play the Florence Price Symphony together and me just wave my arms. It just can't be done. And perhaps it's a good thing, because then that we would still eat into our idea of all coming together in the one place. It just can't happen right now. But in limited ways, it is possible, and that's certainly better than nothing.
Yes. So, in your business hat, because the symphony is a business too, right? Like you have to. It's driven by tickets. What does that? How do you look at that now? Is that another thing that you have to sort of think creatively about? Do you think about, if we run on subscription sales, does this change that on some level?
Yeah, it might. We are moving ahead with plans for next season, and having conversations with our subscribers and donors. I really feel that it's incredibly important for us to stay connected in any ways that we can, which is why we've started this series of web events every Thursday night. Last night was the second. Chelsea Tipton, our wonderful Pops conductor, will be hosting a fireside chat next Thursday.
Yep.
And we're planning on future events, because we want to make sure that music is still in people's lives, and that the New Haven Symphony is still in people's lives. So you don't forget about us. It's highly unlikely, but you know what I'm saying.
I really think that once this is over, that people will race to be in public spaces and at music. I really believe that, because I think this was the way. I don't think people thought how important these kinds of things are to their lives, and to have it yanked away so abruptly, I think freaked everybody out. I think it freaks people out that they can't go hear music live, that they can't go eat in a restaurant, that they can't go see a show of some sort. I think people are really starting to fully understand that is an extraordinary addition to the quality of their lives.
Beautifully said. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's what gives me the most hope in the midst of this massive uncertainty and sort of worldwide angst of what's happening. This too shall pass. But as you say, everybody's missing it so much that there will be a huge hunger for it once we get back.
So do you think that the folks that compose music that some music will come out of, that some composers will be inspired by this time, and you'll see all these coronavirus inspired pieces?
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'm sure there will be specific pieces that people will offer that they will write to commemorate the events, and to write specifically for whatever it is that we're all getting back together, and that it could also be expressed in more subtle ways, just influencing whatever, as I said earlier, whatever pieces they're working on may take a slightly different emotional direction as a result. That said, if you go back to the major cataclysmic events, the two world wars last century, plenty of pieces that were written during that time that just don't betray any sense of what was going on in the outside world. It can also be a way for a composer to just stick to whatever boundaries they had envisioned, and not always let music be a reflection of what the outside world is.
That's quite interesting. So, Alasdair, how are you taking care of yourself? Because this is challenging to be in, to be self-isolating and self-quarantining, and I mean social distancing. This is hard.
I'm doing fine. My husband and I are in San Francisco together. We can get out and take a walk, although I'm actually, now that you said that, I haven't been getting out just quite enough. But I do tell you said about taking care of yourself, there's a lot of baking going on.
Oh my God. All of us, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I realized that if this goes on too much longer, I'm going to have a lot of trouble fitting into my suits. So at some point, there's going to have to be a reassessment. But right now, I think it's about comfort food, and yeah, I'll say that I'm taking refuge in dessert, and I'll pay the price eventually. But right now, it's like, okay, that's the way I am. I think we have to acknowledge that that's okay.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I have my children home from school, and so they've been baking like ridiculous amounts of things, and I'm like, okay, this is we have, at some point we have to shut this down, and eat more salads and less chocolate chip cookies.
I know. That's inevitable, but I'm not quite at that point yet.
As we think about the symphony and the music and all of that, and how people are doing trying to get through this, and the artists, what are you most hopeful about this? Talk a little bit about, I think this is probably the best time to really have the largest, biggest dreams that you can, right? Because anything is possible at this point. So
yeah. Well, the dream is that that we find as a whole that the arts are even more important for society than we had imagined up until this point. That it is a source of refuge, of hope, of stimulation. It reflects our lives, and we need it now more than ever. I sure hope that that's the case. And I know that artists of all stripes all over the world are ready to deliver on that promise, that we can make lives better, we can make lives richer and more meaningful. And so we just want the chance to be able to express ourselves. And I hope we get that sooner rather than later.
I hope so too. So are you listening to, are you getting around to music that you've been putting off listening to that now you have time to listen to?
Yeah. Believe it or not, there's still a fair amount of the day that's involved in phone calls and meetings for planning and discussions. But I am, the next major thing on my plate would be the Sun Valley Music Festival. And I'm starting to get a little bit of a leg up on some of the scores that I'm preparing for that festival. And we'll see how that goes. But it's, and also I haven't gotten around to it yet, but it's on my short list of things to do. Is a big biography of Beethoven that I want to delve into. I've started, but I got waylaid, and it's his big birthday this year. 250th anniversary of his birth.
Wow. So now, do you put some of that music into your next festival? Like, does this time make you think differently about the music choices that you choose moving forward, or do you stick to the script that you had prior to COVID-19?
Kind of depends on the next month or so. Where we are a month's time compared to where we were a month ago. I think will dictate how things move, both for the Summers Festival, which we still hope will take place in late July and August, and the following summer in 2021. And likewise with New Haven, with our season in the fall. I think, yes, we've made all these plans. They've been going on for months and months now, but I would say that all bets are off in terms of sticking to the script. We have to be adaptable and flexible and respond to the situation. So if it means us changing plans, then so be it. I stand ready to do that.
So, Alasdair, does something like this break or shut down a symphony or classical music providers? Like, could this harm a symphony?
Undoubtedly, it could. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but when you've got a potential worldwide recession or depression, we just don't know how many institutions are going to survive that. It will test every single arts institution, certainly in this country, if not around the world, because we don't know what the economic impacts of this is all going to be at the end of the day, how much people are going to be able to deal with this. The basic needs of food and shelter, paramount. So it's a real test of our institutional resilience. And I'd be foolish to make predictions, except I think that the need, as I say earlier, the need is there for the emotional impact of the arts. And as long as people are able to come, I think they will.
So talk a little bit about, before you go, talk a little bit about how it went last night to revisit Florence Price. And I believe there was like a conversation, right? Or I missed the whole event, but I knew that it was coming. So how did it go?
It went very well. I had pre-recorded a segment with the soloist in the Dvorak cello concerto in the second half, Oliver Herbert.
Oh, yes.
Oliver and I had a nice little interview a couple of days ago, which was in the hopper. And then we played the live streaming of the concert as it happened on March 5th. The camera was all the way back in like the middle of the first balcony in Wolsey. So like you sometimes talk to actors that say, I can't watch myself act in films, right? You see that kind of person that say,
Yes.
I do the take, but I won't. I'm kind of like that with conducting. So I was dreading having to watch myself conduct. But I guess on the bright side, the camera was so far away that you couldn't see more than just a rough outline of what I was doing. So I was less traumatized by that than I usually would be. But I was really, really happy with the way the orchestra sounded and played overall. It was really wonderful to hear that. And it was just so great to hear Florence's symphony again. It had been such an important experience for me. Like I sometimes compare a concert to, if you're in a boat, you can see the wake behind you.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes there's a long wake, right? And for me, the more meaningful the performance to me, the longer the sonic wake in my head. In other words, the longer it keeps, bits of it keep replaying, riffs here and there, a little melodic line. That was and continues to be around with me quite a while after the concert itself, which is always a good indication that the piece in question, because that doesn't happen with every piece that I do. I can't possibly, have memories going constantly with every single piece that I do, but some more than others. And in this case, this was such a special experience, and it really felt special in the hall as well. I knew that I felt so from the audience response. It was really encouraging.
I thought so. I mean, I think people were quite moved by it, and I think people really enjoyed it. Did you get good feedback from the?
Oh yes,
from the initial concert.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people were just delighted and as you say, moved by the performance, and I really hope that this can be part of an overall. I mean, I know that it is part of an overall renaissance of her music, and I'm looking for opportunities with other orchestras to do the symphony again in the future, because I believe very, very firmly and sincerely that it needs to become a much more a normal part of the repertoire. There's so many beautiful things that it expresses, and so I want to be able to do it in other places as well. As down the line, again, there's absolutely no reason we shouldn't be revisiting this piece in New Haven in a few years' time.
That'd be great. I remember when we were before we were sent off to Zoom World, when you were in studio and you were talking about how you had musicians who had never heard the piece, never heard of her, and never knew the piece, and was really quite moved by it. And so I'd be interested in hearing if they furthered their pursuit of learning more about her and listening to more of her music.
I'm sure it will. It made a real impression on our musicians. They understood the importance of it and the beauty of it. And the internet being what it is, there's no excuse. If you're interested, you can find out more. And they're going to get another chance to explore her music in next season, because I will be doing another of Florence's pieces in next season. Ethiopia's Shadow in America is the title of the piece. And it's also a beautiful and wonderful piece that I'm looking forward to bringing to the public and to the orchestra next season.
I appreciate that. Before I let you go, is there anything you want to say to the people of New Haven? Because you're out there on the other coast. And I know that some of the symphony folks are listening in. So
yeah, I miss you all so much. It really, on a more personal level, it's made me so sad that with all of this, wind behind the sails, that suddenly things were cut off, and I should have been in New Haven for the young people's concerts and for Classic 7 series, as well as other meetings and all sorts of parts. And I've been enjoying my life in New Haven so incredibly much these past few months that I'm really sorry that I'm not there right now. I'm going to be there as soon as I possibly can in the future, and I can't wait to see all my friends there and resume my life. It can't come too soon.
I'm with you. And that beautiful piece of artwork behind you is stunning. What is that?
Thank you. Yeah, you're seeing part of it. It's kind of a big piece, but that's the north rim of the Grand Canyon, if you can believe it, on my right shoulder.
It's beautiful.
So it's a big piece. This is the only wall it fits on in the house. So
it's beautiful. I mean, it frames you beautifully. So,
well, as I was saying to people the other day in another broadcast of sorts, that the New York Times was saying, if you're doing these kind of they were having experts and of saying how to frame yourself if you're doing a podcast or webcast or whatever, and then it's like single sober colors. You're like beige and no patterns or no bright things. Like, so I haven't paid a great deal of attention to that, as you can see.
Well, I like it. Listen,
Thanks,
do
Babz.
you. I love it. Thank you so much, Alasdair. I appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's big hugs from here to you, and I'm so right back at you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again in person. Really soon.
Take good care.
And you too, please.
All right, and stay in touch. And your team is great. Your New Haven Symphony team is amazing. So
aren't they though?
And all of that. I mean, they just.
Can I just give a shout out to the staff?
Yes.
Because they are an incredible group of people. I think these times test us all and show a lot of our true nature. And for good or bad, I think we've seen a lot of that all over the country, and let's not get into that. But let me just say that I am so lucky to have as my colleagues an incredibly dedicated and talented and committed staff. They have stepped up to the plate. They are working their tails off, and they believe so passionately in what they are doing, the mission of the orchestra. And I couldn't be more fortunate or happy to be collaborating with them. So anybody that's out there in the staff, thank you. I love you. I miss you. And we'll see each other soon.
Yes. Thank you, Alasdair.
Bye. Much love.
Thank you, Harry. I'm out.
Bye.
Wheels keep spinning to the morning light. Wheels keep spinning. Wheels keep spinning. Wheels keep spinning to the morning light. Wheels keep spinning. Wheels keep spinning. Wheels keep spinning to the morning light. Wheels keep spinning. Wheels keep spinning. Wheels keep spinning to the morning light.